Welcome, everybody. My name's Josh. I'm the fantasy football buff, and today is Tuesday. So it is Trend-tastic Tuesday, where we are going to be talking about the biggest trending players in Dynasty right now. And I'm with my buddy Noah, and we're going to be talking about all the players that you need to know about. So before we get started, hit that subscribe button, and let's get it. Today we're talking about trends. We're talking about Dynasty trends in particular, and this is a topic that I want to speak regularly with you because especially in Dynasty formats, I feel that individual players' values is so incredibly subjective, right? There is every different page I look at, every person I talk to has different overall Dynasty rankings, and because of the nature of the format, for how long, how long-term the format is supposed to be, there just isn't anything concrete. And I think to make a dominant team that is winning championships consistently, it's all about following those trends. If a player is trending up in the public's eye, but you don't think they are, sell high, right? If a player is trending down, even though you think their value is higher, now's the time to go buy. And that's something that you and I are going to be watching. What are your thoughts overall on just Dynasty value as a whole?
It's subjective to league settings, league scores. Like I've seen leagues, like I'd love to be in a tight end premium league.
Ooh.
Which is just like, they get extra points for, yards or bonus points or whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also obviously dependent on that, but also when you're talking Dynasty, it talks about different values are going to be placed on different players depending on what your team looks like for this current season. So like for me, for example, I'm kind of in the conversation, but I also could score 80 points in a week, and then I can score 180 the next week. So how I value a player like Ronald Jones,
okay,
that could be of great value for someone that's this year that's trying to make the playoffs. Like for example, Nino, my brother, was trying to trade Ronald Jones for his receiver stack team. He's got Godwin, Stephon Diggs, DeAndre Hopkins. Those are his top three receivers. Yeah. And he's trying to get, a good running back for this year, because Ronald Jones might be good this year, might be good next year as a fantasy back, but he might not be good after that. And that doesn't do much for my team, who's kind of on the cusp, but my team's built for the future.
Yeah.
So it kind of depends on that. That's my take on looking at Dynasty trends, and like how I view it is I go, well, it might be more beneficial for this team than my team, and things like that. So it also depends on like what your season's shaping out to be.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely, man. So, and that's part of making a great Dynasty team is following those trends. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, where I have three players who I believe are trending up, or at least from the public eye. And I believe you have three players as well that are trending up, prepared.
I do.
Awesome. And I have three down as well. So we're going to be talking about a large variety of players. And my number one player who I believe is currently trending up from a Dynasty perspective is none other than DeAndre Swift. He's a player that running back for the Lions. The man was drafted 35th overall. He was the second running back off the board. So literally at the very, very top of the second round in the 2019 draft. In Dynasty, you want running backs on their rookie contracts, right? Just because they, age-wise, they have so much ahead of them. There is clear trends in when it comes to age and declining amongst running backs. Since their bye week, right, which was earlier in the season, he is the RB5 on the season. And that's not even counting this past weekend where he had 25 fantasy points. So I don't feel people aren't putting the amount of respect that should be on his name for how he's producing up to this point. Now, you know what's really funny? Before the bye week, the man only averaged 3 carries a game. Since the bye week, he's averaged 11 carries and 4.6 targets a game. So he's getting a significant amount of touches all of a sudden. Right before this past weekend that he absolutely blew up, it was reported that he is the official starter of the team. And I was listening to a podcast this morning. I don't remember the exact numbers, but out of the, I believe it was 26 total running back touches for the Lions this past weekend, DeAndre Swift had 21 of them. Right, so he is a workhorse. He's a talented running back, right, and he is trending upwards. Like, he is someone that maybe the team itself is, it's not a high-power offense, but he's young and he's getting the work and he has the talent. So he's someone that I think is trending up.
Interesting. What do you think his major drawbacks are as a trending up prospect?
I'm trying to look at it as a whole, and I'd say major drawbacks for me is just the team he plays on, right? They're not a high-scoring offense. Who knows if Matt Patricia will even have a job after this season. And I guess just the way the Lions' history with running backs. I mean, they haven't had a solid fantasy running back in years. Right? I can't even remember off the top of my head when the last time they had someone relevant. They had flashes with Kerryon Johnson, who was still on the team. So they have, and of course, Adrian Peterson is on the team. So they have risk of this being some kind of a running back by committee, depending on the week. But if they're naming him the starter, he's getting the touches, and I don't think AP is going to be around next season, then it's all him. Next season he could be, if he's been a top 5 running back since their bye week, going into next season, he could stay just exactly in that range.
Interesting. I really like DeAndre Swift, and he would have went higher in many drafts, either redraft or not even redraft, but even rookie drafts for Dynasty or startup drafts for Dynasty. Yeah. If he wouldn't have gone drafted to the Lions.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Like, if you switch like CEH and DeAndre Swift, and DeAndre Swift ends up being a Chief and vice versa, you see DeAndre Swift going top 10 in my opinion in a Dynasty startup. I think people would have splurged that hard.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So who is your number one trending player, or the top guy you have down?
Well, I got a couple, and I got to go with my guy, Michael Pittman Jr.
All right.
And I'm just going to throw some. Okay, so here's the thing, and I've talked to Josh about this on off air on a sidebar ordeal. And this is my theory when it comes to rookies or even second year players that are, because the biggest gap, unless if you're just a pure dominant, but even if you are pure dominant, like Saquon, there's always a learning curve from going college offenses to NFL offenses. Yeah. So my favorite thing to happen, and I'll reiterate it many times, is when a rookie or first year or a second year player kind of gets dinged up, not, torn ligaments, not a bad hamstring and not a high ankle sprain. Yeah. High hamstrings and high ankle sprains, I'm not fans of. But legitimately, any other injury, I know they're going to bounce back A-okay because, they got the physical therapy and everything. But what happened to Michael Pittman is it's a serious injury, but it's not something that when you recover from it, you feel the effects of it. So he got compartment syndrome, which means that he pretty much got hit in the shins so hard, or in the calf so hard, that it literally started to swell. And they needed to go in, and he had surgery. And the reason they have surgery is because they go in and they let go of that pressure before it like pretty much pops like a balloon. So all he has to do is worry about recovering from that. And he had a couple games under his belt, but you can tell he's just raw, especially for these rookies this year. All they had was Zoom and then training camp to get ready for the season. No mini OTAs, mini camp OTAs, anything like that. Yeah. But then he got to take, about 6 weeks off and just learn the offense after already having the, a little bit of like a flavor of what it's like. Yeah. And like we talked about earlier, Frank Reich was ecstatic. He thought Michael Pittman Jr. was the best receiver in the league, or in the draft, I should say. And he was like, this guy's everything. Yeah. And I'm just going to, let me just pull up a little bit what he's been dealing with. So since he played the first 3 games, missed weeks 4, 5, 6, and 7. Yeah. So it was out a month, and then played his first game back. He played 59% of his snaps against Detroit, had 1 catch, 1 target, 6 yards. So just getting his feet wet again. Yeah. His last 2 games was against Baltimore and at Tennessee. He played over 80% of snaps in both games, had 15 total targets in both of those games. Yeah. And went for a total of 157 yards receiving, averaging 14.2 yards per catch.
Yeah. Woo.
And he scored 19.2 against Tennessee, and that's with no touchdowns.
Yeah.
And Frank Reich and what I love, I was watching that Thursday night game. Frank Reich loves Pittman because he's a much bigger dude than you think he would be. When he's on the field, I'm like, wow, he's kind of big. Like he's a tall dude. And when I was watching him, I loved that he was still in on rundowns because college coaches have this big philosophy: no block, no rock. If you're a receiver and you're not blocking on the edge, you're not going to get the ball later, And some of the best receivers, like even look at like CeeDee Lamb, for example. One of his best things coming out is like that dude can block, and he will block, and that you saw some of his highlights. And so that's why I'm excited about Michael Pittman Jr. because he's such a big force and can take on those tall, lanky corners and literally manhandle them in the run game as a blocking receiver. So I think the Colts are going to continue to have fun getting him involved. I mean, he's listed at 6'4", 220.
Dude. You know what's funny? He's tall. He's an inch taller than DK Metcalf, right? I'm not saying he's the same build as Metcalf, but he's taller than Metcalf is. So that's, just to put the perspective for the viewers right now, how close it is. It's insane, man. I recently did an appreciation post after that Thursday night game about Michael Pittman Jr., saying that he was trending up after you and I talked about it. I actually tried to send you a couple trade offers, but damn it, you just know how good Pittman's going to be, so it's damn near impossible for me to get him.
Yeah, it's just...
But dude, he is 89th percentile in catch radius. He was, at least in the combine, and he had his first 100-yard game this past week, and he was so close. I think it was on 2 different occasions this past week.
Twice. Yeah, got tackled inside the 5.
Yeah, where he almost scored a touchdown. It's just insane. So I personally, everyone knows I'm a huge Jonathan Taylor fan. I keep talking about his draft capital. People need to realize that Pittman Jr. was drafted before Jonathan Taylor was, right? He was the 34th overall. And most importantly to me, he passed my eye test, right? Watching him out there, he wasn't just one of those tall wide receivers that can't seem to get open. He was open multiple times in that game, and he looked great doing it. He's someone that I'm very excited for moving forward as well. Awesome, man. Well, you and I are eye to eye. I feel bad you're not going to trade him to me, but that's just how Dynasty works sometimes.
That is how it be. That's how it be sometimes.
My next trending up player is Corey Davis. Corey Davis is a player who I say is trending up, and Corey Davis is a very interesting situation to talk about, right? Some people are comparing his breakout, quote unquote breakout, to Devontae Parker, just in the sense that they followed similar career paths. Now, Corey Davis, he's almost 26 years old, so he's not the youngest wide receiver out there. But people sometimes forget that he was drafted 5th overall, right, in the first round in the 2017 draft, and he's struggled in fantasy since then. In 2017, he was the wide receiver 103. In 2018, he was the wide receiver 27. In 2019, he was the wide receiver 65, right? And now in these games, now he's back this season with an improved quarterback play, to say the least. And he's averaging 14 points a game, and that's including a 0-point game he had against Chicago. Now, that 14 points a game, that's more than DJ Moore, and that's more than Mike Evans, right? He's averaging 7 targets a game, which is what he needs to see to be fantasy viable. And I think he's a talented wide receiver, and the Titans did not pick up his 5th-year option. So coming into this year, he's entering free agency. So he's finally fantasy relevant, and next season he could be on a wide receiver needy team. For example, if somehow he leaves the Titans this offseason, joins the Packers, right? His fantasy value will just absolutely skyrocket, in my opinion. So he's a player who I think was really low, right? People wanted nothing to do with him. I still feel people don't really want much to do with him because they still have that stigma around him. Kind of like how even 3 quarters through last season, no one wanted anything to do with Devontae Parker still. And now I think he's coming up. And I think he's a player that has a bright future ahead of him as well.
So you like the Packers as his future? Because I don't think the Titans are going to come around and pay him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
And why would they?
No.
Packers, I think, would be a fun, interesting team.
Mm-hmm.
The Niners would be a fun, interesting team. A team that could use a veteran receiver.
Yeah.
That's a good pick. That's a really good pick. You surprised me with that one.
For the viewers, man, I want you to. This is something you and I have talked about before. And one thing I love about Dynasty is that you have to look – the best way to win a Dynasty is to look at these players as human beings, right? You can win a draft league by just watching their stat sheet, seeing how many carries, how many yards per carry they got. But you and I talked about this the other day, and I want you to break this down about what just happened to Corey Davis, what he's been struggling with over the past couple of years, and why we saw that chip on his shoulder.
Well, I mean, I didn't know about this until I saw it on live TV on Thursday. Yeah. Man, he's on the sideline pregame crying because he just lost his brother to a fight to cancer. And I think about it. He's a young dude. And we're both young 20-year-olds, like in our 20s, and I can only imagine what it's like to lose my brother. My brother. It'd be tough. I can't imagine losing my brother to cancer this young, and imagine how hard it would be to focus on football or anything else going on in your life when your brother, who is, whether or not maybe you fight with your brothers or you don't get along with your siblings or whatever, but at the end of the day, it's your brother.
Yeah,
it's just losing that fight, and you can't do anything about it. And you're like at practice, you're in film, and you're like, yeah, this is important. This is my job, but it's not more important than, my brother, And so, and I'm not saying, I don't want to say this and make it sound like, oh, I'm excited for Corey Davis's future because he's going to play for his brother and all that. That's not what I'm getting at. But it's it is what it is at this point for him. And my heart goes out to him. And I send my, deepest condolences in that regard.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to see, when people turn in life in general, people turn out their best. They go one of two directions. They either fall down into the hole and they never get back up, or they come back even stronger than they would be. And I imagine I see him, unless if he doesn't want to be playing football, I see him playing for his brother and going all in to be the best that he can be in honor of his brother.
Yeah.
And whether you want to use that for your, for your advantage in fantasy and whatnot. And for me, I just want to root for the guy.
Yeah.
I just want him to succeed because that is tough as a human being.
Yeah.
And so it's tough though. But that, getting that resolution of this is what it is. And then he starts to go through the grieving process of losing a loved one. It's just at some point, I'm curious to see how much he dedicates his game to his brother.
Yeah, man. And again, looking at it from a holistic perspective, 2017 drafted 5th overall. There is so much pressure as any NFL player to be drafted in the first round. He gets very mediocre quarterback play, right? Now we can't all blame it on Mariota, but it was very mediocre quarterback play. So everyone had sky-high expectations. He didn't get close to meeting them. And now he has to deal with not only his brother struggling with cancer, but everyone's yelling at him, calling him a bust. Right, because everyone was so excited. I remember back in 2017.
Oh yeah,
so excited about his prospects. And even last season, when people were still low on him, it was interesting. They were talking about why AJ Brown and Ryan Tannehill had such a tight connection, and that was because they were out. They were both on the second string team coming into last season, so they already had that chemistry together. Meanwhile, Corey Davis was with the first stringers with Mariota, and now that they've had a full off season, even though it was a virtual off season to connect. Their coach came out. What's the name of the coach of the Titans? I can't remember the name off the top of
Mike Vrabel.
Mike Vrabel came out last season and said something how Corey Davis is still the best wide receiver on that Titans team, despite AJ Brown breaking out and absolutely crushing. So it's something to keep an eye on, right? When the coach is saying that, and you look at it a whole perspective, he didn't get a fair cut, and he has a very bright future ahead of him. Dude,
very interesting.
Who's your second overall trending up player?
Kind of a homer pick for you. I'm kind of doing this for you.
I like it.
But I watched the game last night. Damien Harris.
Ooh, let's go.
Damien Harris. I have / Sony Michel in this because I always think this year is a great time to buy low on Sony Michel if you think he can come back from his injuries. But mainly Damien Harris. Just that I almost want to call it that Patriots backfield, because they don't have much for help at receivers. But let me pull this up real quick. I'm sorry for not being, but I had this up and then I changed it. All right, so snap percent. Fantasy is all about maximizing your fantasy opportunities. Like you like DeAndre Hopkins because he gets a lot of great fantasy opportunities and he converts them into fantasy points. Type of thing. So I'm looking at his stat sheet from this year and it's like, all right, he's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games with 10 plus carries.
Okay. In
those games, his worst average yards per carry is 5.1.
Wow.
He's averaged 5.9, 5.8, 6.4, 5.1, and 5.5. it's off 17 carries, 10 carries, 16 carries, 14 carries, and then 22 carries against Baltimore in the rain.
Yeah.
And he's not going to get targeted in the passing game. He has 2 targets on the season as a whole. Caught both of them, But 100%. That's James White, Rex Burkhead, all day, every day.
Yeah.
But I like Damien Harris because it's a young guy. They spent good draft capital on him.
Yeah.
He's been in this he's been buried on this. The Patriots have many capable backs, and they all ask them to do different things. But I'm just excited for Damien Harris because he looks good. He looks explosive.
Yeah.
He's a high pedigree, came from Bama, so he's a highly recruited player, is used to being good, for lack of a better, just used to being on good teams and knows how to play good football. It's learning that Bill Belichick system, but also this was the issue with the Patriots, and you've watched Patriot football. This was the issue with the Patriots at the beginning of the year. Mm-hmm. They try to put Cam Newton into a Tom Brady offense, trying to pass the ball too much in traditional Tom Brady fashions. And it's like, no. When you got Cam Newton, you got to adapt, and you got, and you got to be like, you got to be like, we're going to go downhill at you, and we're going to make you commit 8-9 guys to stop in the run.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go from there. And then if we get one-on-one coverage and we got Jacoby Myers, we got these tight ends, Asai, I don't know how to pronounce their names, or, or James White one-on-one, or Edelman one-on-one. It's like, all right, then that you get Cam Newton to do that. So I think it's going to flip back and forth, but I think as the year goes on, Rex Burkhead will never, I'm a huge Husker fan. He's from Nebraska. Love Rex Burkhead. He will never be their bell cow all year long.
Yeah. He's
too good on special teams. He's too good of a gadget Swiss Army knife for them to be like, we're going to give you all the carries. They're always going to get James White involved on third down. But I really do think he's good. He can start dominating first and second down carries. And when you got Cam Newton at quarterback, the run lanes just open up a little bit more, because you've got to respect Cam Newton's running ability. Yeah. And play action and boots and things like that I think eventually, his scores haven't been great. He scored 16 points in 1 week, but he has 3 games over 100 yards. And the fantasy touches are becoming there. And this was the first week he played over 50% of snaps. So I think as long as he gains the trust of Cam Newton, I think you could argue he's the most talented back on that team. Sony Michel has some busted up knees. And the Patriots all of a sudden are pushing for a wild card spot. Yeah. Oh yeah. And they're going to make it behind that run game.
Yeah. Dude, I agree with you, man. As a Patriots fan, this is, of course, a situation I've been watching very closely. I was very excited when they drafted Damien Harris last season, or in the 2018 draft. I was a little confused because of the high draft capital they put into Sony Michel. And then I was shocked to see that he was a healthy scratch almost every week. I think he had 4 carries on the season last year. And the more I researched and the more I looked into it, the Patriots were just content with the running backs they had. And Damien Harris doesn't offer anything in special teams. Right, so because of that, unless there was an injury to one of the starting running backs, there was no need to put him on the active roster. As a Patriots fan, watching Patriots games, Sony Michel does not look good out there. Sony Michel I don't know what it is. He looked so good in the playoffs 2 seasons ago when he was getting all those carries, right? And now he just isn't looking as explosive as he used to, and the man is constantly struggling with injury. And like you said, Damien Harris right now is all in. And the best part about it, from a dynasty perspective, he's 23 years old. Rex Burkhead, right, is 30. James White is 28. Right, they're not going to be around forever, right? These players, you see time and time again, these running backs, as they get into their late 20s, early 30s, they start aggressively declining. Even though James White's such a wide receiver, I feel like he's going to stick around for a while. My only hesitation, and the reason he isn't valued any higher, is just because it is the Patriots' backfield. Right, just because you do have Cam Newton, who's going to hawk a couple rushes in the red zone. He's not going to see a lot of PPR work. So I don't see an RB1 ceiling, at least not within the next couple of years. But, I mean, who's to say that if Rex Burkhead retires in a year from now and Sony Michel gets phased out because he isn't being efficient, Damien Harris can't be a solid RB2 if he's getting the work that he's getting so far. So I like the pick a lot. As a Patriots fan, I love the pick, for sure. So.
I mean, I just don't. I can see Damien Harris next year or the year or the year after, or even the back end of this year, having the similar season that you're seeing Ronald Jones have right now, where some games he's only going to get you 5 or 6 points, but then there's some games where he's going to get the rock so much, he's eventually going to bust a couple and he's going to score 24, 25 points.
Yeah.
And a solid RB2, or at the very least, a solid, like, hey, let's flex you, dude. Like, or a bye week fill in if you need a good bye week. I just think it's a good. Patriots are always going to be well coached, so it's just no team in the NFL had a larger shift in offensive philosophy than the Patriots this year.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's true. And I mean, as a Patriots fan, I know how many players opted out on the defensive side because of COVID in the offseason. So in next season, the defense gets a little better. They're running the ball even more. I totally see it, man. All right, my last and third and final trending up player is Diontae Johnson, wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers. The man is only 24 years old, right? Last year was his rookie season, so he has 2 years left in his rookie contract. And why I need to highlight Diontae Johnson is because of the crazy amount of targets this man is seeing, right? He is seeing 10.3 targets per game. 10.3. I need to repeat that. 10.3 targets per game. That's more than Chase Claypool. That's more than Juju, right? He is leading that team in targets right now when he is healthy, because he's left a couple games with injury, and in those healthy games, he's averaging 16 points a game. He is 7th in the league right now in contested catch rate, and that feeds into my final point of him passing the eye test, right? He really looks good on the field. He's explosive. He's getting open. He's shifty, right? He reminds me, not to the same extreme, but he reminds me of a younger AB, especially with Big Ben throwing him the ball. And maybe those are big shoes to fill, but that's how I feel watching him play. My only concern for Diontae Johnson here is that he is 24 years old. He's the future of the wide receiver corps for the Steelers, and I don't know how much longer Big Ben's got. Right? I would be shocked if Big Ben doesn't retire after this upcoming season. Maybe he plays one more year on top of that. And they're currently undefeated, right? So if they do end up drafting a quarterback, it'll be late in the first, unless they trade for somebody. So the quarterback situation is uncertain, and we saw how terrible that offense was with Mason Rudolph under center. So that's the one hit on Diontae Johnson. He has the talent, right? He has the ability. He has the youth. He's seeing the volume. We just don't know what he's going to look like without Big Ben under center. So he is one player who, because of all those targets and how well he's doing, he's trending up, man.
I'm looking up something real quick. Big Ben is 38 years old.
Yeah.
But I will say that elbow surgery he had actually makes his elbow stronger. It makes him a better thrower.
Interesting.
Because maybe you'll enjoy this. I don't know. But particularly when you have shoulder and elbow injuries to throwing athletes.
Yeah.
When you throw the ball or you throw anything, it's supposed to be like 85% core, and then this is just the mechanic that gets it there, you know? Okay. But it's all supposed to be core. So when let's say you hurt your elbow like Big Ben did, and then you have to throw the ball and you need to work on those mechanics, but you can't put all that stress on your elbow anymore. You get really good core stability, and you really learn how to throw with your body and your core and your legs rather than using all of your arm.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
So I actually think Big Ben, because the window for the Steelers, everyone thought it was like 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's now.
It's now. Yeah, this team is so good. That defense is loaded. Offensive line, veteran. Running backs, many options at running back.
Yeah.
Receiver, deep. And you got a veteran quarterback coming on like a brand new, shiny, new elbow, you know. And I think I have a hard time thinking the Steelers don't win the Super Bowl this year.
Really?
Because their defense is that good, and their offense can put up that many points.
Wow, that's awesome.
You know, so I think Diontae Johnson is a fantastic buy. So if you can somehow swing him, I think it's fantastic buy, because Juju's in that contract year. Yeah. Again, you could totally see Juju being dipped out.
That's kind of what I'm expecting to happen. Yeah.
And then you'll get Chase Claypool, and then probably James Washington takes like that third fiddle, or even think of it like this. It's like Juju's going to demand a pretty high contract.
Yeah.
Corey Davis is not. Could Corey Davis join the Steelers?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a pretty decent way to replace Juju, and arguably could be more talented, in terms of draft capital and where they were spending, what the future vision was when they first got drafted. So no, I think you might be selling your trending up guy not as high as you should be. I actually think the situation's better than you're giving it credit.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm just looking 2 years from now, right? 2022, I have no idea who's going to be the quarterback for the Steelers, and I really don't think in 2 years from now it's going to be Big Ben. And I'm pulling up the rankings right now. I want to see this. Let's do no, that's not the guy. So they have Diontae Johnson right now as the wide receiver 35 in Dynasty rankings on Fantasy Pros, and that's behind guys like Michael Gallup. That surprises me. That's behind players like Jalen Reagor, OBJ, and I think he should be in that tier. My only concern is just what the future looks like quarterback-wise. But again, my point, I'm not saying he's trending down. He's still trending up. He looks great out there. So, I don't want to talk shit on the guy I'm saying is trending up. But yeah. No, but anyway.
I like that situation. My last guy and this is very controversial, but you'll like what I have to say here. I didn't watch all of football this weekend. Caught some things here and there, but I did watch that Sunday Night Football game.
Ooh.
Hence why I have a Patriots player and a Ravens player. Hollywood Brown.
Okay.
I think is an excellent buy right now.
Yeah. All right.
It's for the same reasons why, and this is not a buy. It could be a buy come around playoff time, like it's gonna pay off. But this is my whole futuristic. I'm looking like way down the line for Dynasty. Like you're trying to build a team next year, or you're not a contender. You're a middle of the road guy, and you just kind of want a future piece. Yeah. Hollywood Brown's speed is unconventional at the receiver position.
Yeah.
But like we said, the Ravens are missing one key component, and that's an upgrade at performance at Willie Snead's position.
Mm-hmm.
That outside boundary X receiver. It needs to command more respect from a defense. Yeah. And we saw that a little bit. Willie Snead had a pretty decent game last night. He scored a couple touchdowns, but even he just looked better. He was getting open. Him and Lamar were clicking a little bit better. But I could see a team like the Ravens really upgrading that receiver slot. I could see them. They might luck out and get one of these, get another rookie, right? And if I'm them, I'm trying to get a vet to come in and try to, dominate that role. Whether you trade, like how the Cowboys and the Raiders trade for Amari Cooper, and if just first round pick. Hey, we'll give you a first round pick. We'll take that player. Or like same with the Bills, and Stephon Diggs. I could see the Ravens doing a very similar move like that to get someone that they like. And as soon as you get this, imagine like this 5-headed monster. You got Lamar.
Yeah.
You got J.K. Dobbins. You got Hollywood Brown. You got Mark Andrews.
Oh, yeah.
And then you're missing literally one tall, big playmaker receiver. Like imagine if DK Metcalf replaced Willie Snead, and you had Metcalf, you know what I mean? But that's the type of player that they're missing. And so I think Hollywood Brown is a great buy now because him and Lamar are still working out the kinks.
They are.
In terms of I don't know if you saw them last night. You're like, no, dude, you need to be going this way. And they're working together. They're just working out the kinks.
Yeah.
Because this offense is having to evolve, but they didn't have time this offseason to let it evolve how they needed it to. And so I think you're going to see late in the season, it's eventually going to start clicking. In Hollywood Brown next year. A lot of people were high on Hollywood Brown this year. Hollywood Brown last year was a year away from being a year away. Hollywood Brown is a year 3, year 4 breakout guy because of the way he has to play the game. Yeah. Because he's so small, but he's just so fast. You have to kind of learn, especially when you don't have Pat Mahomes throwing you the ball like Tyreek Hill. Things kind of change a little bit, So my trending up player in terms of long-term view, guy that I would like to get on my team, but I'm not going to trade Michael Pittman Jr. for, is Hollywood Brown.
Yeah, no, man, I'm with you. I traded for Hollywood Brown this past or a couple of weeks ago, and I've done a lot of research on that front. And I think some people forget that he didn't even participate in the combine, right? Because he was recovering from a Liz Frank injury or Liz Frank surgery, and those recovering from that type of surgery takes time, right? He was playing last year with screws still in his foot. Right, so he wasn't even getting close to the potential that he had last season. He gets the screws out this past offseason. He puts in work. That's one of the reasons I love him, at least from a social media side. He puts in work. He gained like 15 pounds in muscle, right, which is something, and he still was able to keep up his speed. And I love this trending up player, one, because I have him on my team, but two, because of his upcoming schedule, right? We're looking down the road as well, but he plays Tennessee, right? The Steelers, Dallas, Cleveland, Jacksonville, and the Giants to finish out the season. So they have such an easy schedule, and the Ravens just lost, man. Lamar is going to be pissed off. Lamar wants to put up 50 points a game for every of these upcoming games. I do think we're going to see some blow-up games from Hollywood before the end of the season.
Yeah, I think so too, and it's just a matter of time. Because let me pull up some numbers, because numbers don't lie.
Oh yeah.
Let me Brown. Give me 1 second.
Oh, good.
Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown. Let's look at these numbers. All right, here's the thing. Over the past 3 weeks, they had a Week 7 bye. They've played Pittsburgh, Indianapolis, and New England. 3 really good defenses, like 3 of the best defenses in the NFL. And the New England game was in the rain, but he's played 94% of snaps, 86% of snaps, 94% of snaps. He's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games where he's getting at least 6 targets. And he's only scored 2 touchdowns this year. But I really do think if you're on the field that much, I mean, if you're playing 80+% of offensive snaps, plus eventually getting things to click, outside of Pittsburgh, their schedule in terms of pass defenses is cake. So I think you're right. I think it's just a matter of time. Because look, he gets against Washington and Cincinnati, weeks 4 and 5. He had 8 targets and 10 targets, and he ended up scoring 12 points and 19 points in both, respectively, in those games. But then his yards. The thing is they have to. This is my thing. Hollywood Brown is a move the ball down the field type of guy. They need some. He's an explosive play type of guy. The Browns the Ravens are missing someone that can get them there, is like a Michael Thomas type of guy. We're just here to get the 8-yard catch and move the chains. Here to get the 8-yard catch and move the chains. Hollywood Brown's to take the top off a team, and that's what Travis Kelce is, in large part for Pat Mahomes. And so they're missing that 6-7 yard route guy that just helps them get on schedule, so that eventually Hollywood Brown can can take it deep on 2nd and 1 and just be like, hey, we're gonna throw it up and you're gonna try to go get it. And and I will say Lamar's got to be better. Yeah,
absolutely.
And that's the biggest. That's probably, if you're looking at this situation on like, ooh, is he really a trending up player? You got to believe that Lamar can continue to get better, and I do. I
agree with you, man. And again, the numbers are there, right? The numbers there. Right now, I have Player Profiler pull up in front of me, and he is Hollywood Brown is running 100% of the Ravens' routes. 100%. That's what it says right here. He's not always on the field on running plays, but he's running 100% of the team's routes. He is 4th right now in the league in deep targets, right? He's not necessarily always. I'll pull this up. He has. His catchable target rate is only 71%. That's 81st in the league, but he's seeing a lot of downfield targets. So like you said, Lamar Jackson needs to step up. He currently is 15th in the league in air yards and 6th in the league in air yard share per his team. So the team's not passing a lot, but when they do, he's seeing a lot of targets. He's seeing deep targets as well. So it's the peripherals are there. If Lamar Jackson can take a step up and start connecting on him, then dude, again, I own Hollywood in multiple leagues, and I can't tell you how many times I've seen Hollywood just wide open on the seam and Lamar just sail it over his head. And I'm like, oh man.
And eventually those are going to hit.
Yeah.
And that's when this offense can really take off. But a lot of it, and that's another thing that really plays into a fact for this year. Right now, in comparison to last year, the Ravens' offensive line is down 2 huge starters.
Yeah.
Marshall Yonder retired at guard. Ronnie Stanley out with injury after, was it last week or 2 weeks ago? He tore his knee up, you know? Yeah. And so Lamar probably isn't feeling as comfortable in the pocket. So it's just going to take time, you know, for them to really develop that mesh. But I really think the Ravens are one big, like literally big-bodied receiver from really taking their offense to the next level, which is scary to say. And that's with a banged-up Mark Ingram, a Gus Edwards that's just kind of like keeping the train rolling along, and a J.K. Dobbins that's just trying to figure out how to play in the NFL.
Yeah. Dude, it's true, man. Okay, good. So we appreciate that we're on the same page here, because we're going to transition now to the trending down. And my first trending down Dynasty player is actually DJ Moore. Right? He's a player that you drafted, third round in our startup league. He, going into our draft this past offseason, he was ranked as a top 5 Dynasty wide receiver. And people were so excited about the targets and his connection with Teddy B. And he just hasn't the man was a former first-round pick, right? He's only 23 years old. He is coming up on a contract year, but this offense is taking its time to click, right? They have all new offensive staff, or all new coaching staff right now. And the last 4 weeks, DJ Moore has been 4th on the team in targets, right? Robbie, over the last month, right, this offense is still progressing, still finding its identity. Robbie Anderson is seeing 8.5 targets a game. Curtis Samuel is seeing 6.5. The combination of Mike Davis and CMC, because CMC played that one game, is 7 targets a game. And DJ Moore was only seeing 5.25 targets, right? He's not a player who typically is that downfield threat. He's not the big guy in the red zone necessarily. He was more of a PPR play, and he just isn't seeing that targets, right? But he is still 20th this season right now in fantasy, but he's being highly efficient. Right now, he's 8th in the league in yards per reception. He's 12th in the league in catches of 20 or more yards, right? So he's breaking down the field. He's being efficient. He's actually scored, I think, 3 or 4 touchdowns, which isn't crazy, but that's definitely boosting his value for sure. And the main reason I wanted to highlight DJ Moore, and it's perfect that you and I just talked about Hollywood Brown, was because our trade deadline in our league is today, right? It's tonight as soon as this game starts. And you and I were trying to work out a trade before the end of this league where I was initially attempting to send you Hollywood Brown and a pick for DJ Moore, right? I feel like my team is missing one solid wide receiver this season from finishing out the year. And I want to debate a little bit with you, because I was sitting there in front of my computer looking at all these numbers that you and I just talked about, and I had a hard time realizing why DJ Moore should be ranked over Hollywood Brown in Dynasty formats. Now, that might sound crazy right now because of how aggressively different they're being ranked, right? I mean, DJ Moore is ranked 12th, I think, right now in Fantasy Pros, and Hollywood's 32nd. But let me just pull out some comparisons for them. They're both first-round picks. They're both 23 years old, right? Hollywood is 1 year earlier in his rookie contract, right? So he's only in his 2nd year. Meanwhile, Moore is in his 3rd year, right? So he has more time on that rookie contract. And the biggest argument initially would be that Moore is seeing more targets. But over the course of the season, Moore is only seeing 6.9 targets per game, and Hollywood's seeing 6.1. Right? So there's not a huge on a per game basis target difference. Now, the question really comes down to, in my opinion, who is in a better scheme and who has a better quarterback, right? DJ Moore right now, 79% of his targets are deemed catchable. That's 45th in the league. Hollywood, like you and I just talked about, 71%. That's less than 3/4 of his targets currently are able to be catchable. Hollywood has an easier schedule going into the playoffs, and he is currently 4th in the league in deep targets, like you and I talked about. Meanwhile, Moore is 12th. So the target differential isn't there. Moore is being more efficient currently, but Hollywood is seeing more predictable volume down the field, as Moore is 14th right now in yards after the catch. So anyways, the point I'm trying to get to, I'm not trying to talk too much shit on DJ Moore, but when I was sitting there talking with you, I was about to offer Hollywood Brown and a 2021 second round pick. And I couldn't do it because as I was sitting there, I was like, man, I don't think the difference right now between Hollywood and DJ Moore is that different, right? I don't think that. I think the targets are about the same. I think their quarterbacks, I do think Lamar is going to improve and be better than Teddy B, but who knows what the Panthers quarterback situation is going to be like. Dude, those were the thoughts I was having, man. I might be way off, but I want to hear your thoughts on this debate because I feel like saying that they're even in the same tier is a really hot take right now.
No, I don't think anyone's going to be doubting that DJ Moore, from a fantasy perspective, has been disappointing, especially someone that drafted him so high. I was like, wow, him and this Joe Brady offense coming from LSU, it's going to be fantastic.
Yeah.
And I almost benched DJ Moore this week, and then I was on Twitter and I saw ESPN Stats and Info was doing this whole, I don't know if you saw, which receivers run the highest percentage of X whatever route, so they did the go route, the comeback, the slant, all this stuff. And this stat made me be like, all right, it's eventually going to start rolling DJ Moore's way, and it did on Sunday. Yeah. Because the go route leader, the number one and number two go route leader in the NFL are Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore.
Wow. Yeah.
Robbie Anderson is 9.8 yards per route run. DK Metcalf is number 3 at 8.4 yards. Yeah. They didn't give me DJ Moore's number efficiently, so I don't know what it is, but it's anywhere between 8.4 and 9.8. So let's say it's 9, And so I also watched a lot of LSU football last year because they were awesome. Yeah. And they had Justin Jefferson, they had Jamar Chase, CEH. I mean, that team was loaded. Yeah. And it wasn't always a Jamar Chase show. It wasn't always a Justin Jefferson show. That ball goes to whoever that deems it's going to go to. And going into the season, DJ Moore was always going to be getting that number one guy on him. Mm-hmm. I think Teddy Bridgewater in that offense is fantastic. I mean, the Bucs drafted Jameis. The year before Teddy Bridgewater was in the draft, I'm a Bucs fan. I was like, I want Teddy Bridgewater. I've always loved him. Him and Devontae Parker at Louisville were fantastic. Yeah. I totally get what you're saying, though, because if you would have sent me that offer, I would have had a hard time not accepting it. Yeah. But and you might end up being right, but for me, at least right now, the Panthers, even when Christian McCaffrey's back, are a pass-based team. Yeah. They're obviously going to run with Christian McCaffrey, but one of their favorite things to do is get Christian McCaffrey out open in space. Yeah. And they've been imagine if you're game planning against the Panthers and there's no Christian McCaffrey. It's like, all right, who's their biggest threat? Yeah. And when you think about it, it's probably like, well, DJ Moore's their best athlete now on offense. In my opinion, he's a better athlete than Robbie Anderson when I'm trying to look at it from a defensive coordinator. So it's like, all right, so maybe you put a little bit more focus towards there. You can hold on to Robbie Anderson in some regard, and then you kind of just let the running back situation play out, and you got Mike Davis and this and that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. But also, the Panthers were learning a new offense. This is their first year into it. They didn't get OTAs. They didn't get mini camps. Yeah. So that would have been a very interesting offer. I would have had a hard time not saying that. But I definitely see DJ Moore not being I think he has been being a trending down player over the past month or so. Yeah. But I'm curious to see what happens over the next couple of weeks because, he scored he had, 19 points this weekend? Something
he's playing well.
He played well.
Yeah, he's playing well. He's producing.
It's just as discouraging to see Robbie Anderson get the boatload of targets to start the season. But I'm also, at least for this year, I'm of the mindset that the first 6 weeks or the first 6 to 8 weeks of the NFL season, in terms of me projecting outward for fantasy, are a crapshoot. Yeah. Because what really is going to help me determine the front end of the rest of this decade, 2021 to 2025, what's going to help me determine that is how the rest of these teams look over the last 6 to 8 weeks of the NFL season. Because, you've had reps, you've had practice. So I'm curious, because as of now, yes, you're right, especially, but also I will take Teddy Bridgewater and a pass-centered offense over Hollywood Brown in a not pass-centered offense. Now, if you tell me that an Amari Cooper type of player goes and joins Hollywood Brown, then yeah, I think Hollywood Brown becomes arguably like Chris Godwin could not get signed by the Bucs, and he could get signed by Baltimore, and he is such an awesome number 2 to play with Chris Godwin.
Yeah.
You know, that type of thing. So interesting.
I'll say this. So I didn't want to look too much at the beginning of the season, like you were saying. I just looked at the past month, as I talked about before. And I mean, he was 4th in the team in targets right now. And I understand they're a pass-first team. But the fact that I mean, he's on a run for Hollywood's on a run first, Moore's on a pass first. They're still seeing the same amount of targets at the end of the day, just because of who else is on the team. So I guess for my final decision, why I decided that not to offer that trade is I just think they're too close tier-wise, and it wasn't worth a top 20 rookie pick for me on top of.
I totally get that. I totally get that.
Awesome. Who is your sweet? I like it, man. Who is your next trending down player, or your first trending down player?
I have 3.
All right, break the first one down for me.
It's all the Rams running backs.
Oh, I like it. That's brutal, man. You're a Cam Akers truther.
It's just right now for the Rams, because they're they're a good team this year, but this year in particular, they are going to do what the Niners did last year. Yeah. And they're just going to feed the hot hand of the day and go from there. But like, even when you look at like Darrell Henderson started, other than week 1, he started the season out pretty well. You know, he was scoring quite a few fantasy points. Yeah. If you look at his snap percentages, they're just not there. Yeah. He has 2 games over 50% of snaps. And in those games, he scored 9.2 and 9.6 respectively. If he doesn't score a touchdown, his highest game for fantasy points wise, where he didn't score a touchdown, is 9.6 points.
Yeah, very touchdown reliant. Yeah.
You know, and Cam Akers, as we saw last year with Darrell Henderson, the Rams are just not going to fully trust a rookie running back. Yeah. But again, I will say I do always enjoy the fact that he was hurt early, had a little playing time, got hurt, and now is coming back. I do think it's maybe a more of a Darrell Henderson down. Cam Akers, I think, is about to pop off. Or not pop off, but start seeing more and more, and they're going to try to see what they have with him. But as long as Malcolm Brown's there, the Rams running back situation is just not worth having. Yeah. It truly isn't. So I would say if you have, like for me, if I have the Rams backfield, I'm not planning for this year for it to be good, or even next year for it to be good. Yeah. It's that following year where I feel like it can finally get through. But you know, and that offensive line isn't fantastic. It's not like you're running behind the old Cowboys offensive line where it's like holes are going to naturally open up. That the offensive line can be considered patchwork in a lot of ways. So Rams running backs as a whole, I know everyone hasn't been high on them even at all, but even more so, just because I think them running the ball takes the ball out of their best players' hands, which is Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, and their tight ends. Yeah, man, it's interesting. They over this offseason, what's his name? McVay came out and was saying how he loves the Kyle Shanahan running back system, and he was telling everybody it's going to be a running back by committee. And damn it, he told us exactly what he's going to do, man. He has kept to his word. And every week, you don't know who's going to find the end zone. And the fact that there are so many running backs with Malcolm Brown is just unpredictable. I'm with you, man. I'm with you on that one. The Patriots, the Rams running back situation is what the Patriots running back situation used to be. So if you were always fed up with the Patriots running back situation, well, now you can have those same reasons to be the Rams and now because the Patriots are about to figure it out. The Rams are just here. You go get 8 carries. You go get 8 carries. Like they
can't rely on it. Yeah.
I'm curious though. What are Malcolm Brown's snap percentages? Because Cam Akers is only I think max 30. Let's see. Malcolm Brown here, snap percentage. Again, he has 4 games over 50%. Yeah. Other than that, I mean, it legitimately is it's legitimately a 40 Malcolm Brown, 40 Darrell Henderson, 20 Cam Akers split.
Yeah.
And why would you change it?
Yeah. No, I agree with you, man. I agree. So just not a lot of fantasy value there, unfortunately. But we'll see what happens in a couple of years if they don't switch that around. I just don't see a future, at least in the near future, where they go back to that workhorse role like they did with Todd Gurley. I just don't see it.
Look at where it got him,
Yeah.
A crappy contract, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, my second trending down player is Devin Singletary. Coming into this offseason, in our startup draft, he was drafted as a top 24 running back. Because of his age, I believe he's only 23 years old, and he looks decent enough on the field. But with them drafting Zach Moss, when Moss is on the field, Devin Singletary is only seeing 51.8% of the snaps. Right, he is 28th on the season right now in fantasy points, and that's with Zach Moss missing, I think it was either 4 or 5 different games. And the reality is he just doesn't get the valuable carries for fantasy, right? All his carries come between the 20s, right? Last season, he only had 3 red zone carries on the season. This season, with an injured Zach Moss for a lot of the different games, he has 6 carries right now inside the 10. That's as many as Taysom Hill does, right? So he's just not getting the valuable carries. And, people will tell you, well, he's a PPR kind of running back. And I mean, up to this point, again, with Zach Moss being injured for the past 4 or 5 games, he's only averaging 3.8 targets per game. So it's not as if almost 4 targets a game is valuable, but it's not enough to say that he's a locked in RB2 every week, right? He's just not doing it. He's more of a middle tier flex play he probably will get you anywhere between 7 to 12 fantasy points on any given week. He just doesn't have that much of a ceiling, and the player I definitely think is trending down.
Yeah, I hate to agree because I love both of Buffalo's running backs.
Yeah,
I think it's a great 1-2 punch, but right now Singletary's style just hasn't been meshing as well with the Bills as I think they had hoped it would.
Yeah.
But man, I do love the guy, but the situation is not playing nicely. And Zach Moss is awesome. I mean, as you know, he's fantastic. But yeah, it's hard fantasy wise. Devin Singletary is a tough play.
Yeah, especially, it's a 50-50 split, and right now I think they're ranked like 15th right now in team rush attempts. So it's not like they're that strong defense.
Run reliant.
Yeah, they're just not anymore. So it's a 50-50 split, and they're both getting like 8 to 10 carries a game. There's just not a whole ton of value there. And so Devin Singletary.
And he's not going to be getting the goal line work.
No. It's either Josh Allen or Zach Moss at this point.
Yeah.
Anyways, who's your second to last trending down player?
Honestly, this is tough for me to say, and it's another big homer pick for me.
Yeah.
But Leonard Fournette.
Dude, he was my last one. Leonard Fournette was my last guy of trending down.
Well, I'm glad because and it's not because, Ronald Jones did awesome yesterday, but it's what happened to the Bucs when they try to force Leonard Fournette into the lineup.
Yeah.
As a Bucs fan, this was my issue with it. He was hurt to start the year, and Ronald Jones started the year off pretty well.
Yeah, he did. Look good.
Ronald Jones' biggest knock on him is he can't catch the ball, and when he does catch the ball, he fumbles the ball. So it's just an issue with him in the receiving game, and I totally understand that. But they tried to treat Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette equals when I think that was a mistake because Leonard Fournette was the new guy. Ronald Jones was still the incumbent and needed to, be like, hey, he knows this offense more. He understands this better. He's been repping it longer all offseason. He is ready for this role. And I think that kind of intimidated him mentally at first. If I'm being honest, it's like, wow, I got, a chip on your shoulder, but also a little like, there's someone chasing behind you. But Leonard Fournette completely, I don't want to say completely, but really does take away from the flow of the Bucs run game.
Yeah.
And Leonard Fournette is never my ideal PPR third down back.
No,
I want a quick speedy guy like James White.
Yeah.
I want a Austin Eckler.
Yeah.
You know, a Christian McCaffrey. I mean, he's every down and plays defense if he wanted to. But like that type of player where it's like, you know, and Leonard Fournette is just like, oh, I'm going to run you over. I'm going to run you over again. I'll run you over again. It's like, and he has good hands, and no one's arguing that. He can make people miss, but it's like he just completely kills the flow of the Bucs run game.
Yeah.
That's my biggest issue with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, I'm with you, man. He was my last trending down player. And the main reason is I feel he is still living off the hype of the fact that he was the 4th overall pick back in 2017. I feel like the Bucs got him and like, oh man, this is former first-round pick. I feel like fantasy players, when he went to the Bucs, like, oh man, the guy was a former first-round pick, and he just hasn't lived up to that potential. You could say it was Jacksonville's fault, but he's just not doing it now. From a dynasty perspective, the man is 25 years old, right? He, up to this point, from a fantasy output, has been incredibly mediocre. He's seeing a lot of PPR targets, a lot of targets in general, but just not really getting it done. And the reason I believe is trending down is because I needed Leonard Fournette to prove it to me. If he wants to be someone who's trending up and someone you should go acquire in your dynasty league, he needed to win that starting job and be, you know, the goal line back in this elite Tom Brady offense, and he hasn't done it. Right, he has not lived up to that potential. And now, I mean, he's on a 1-year contract, right? So we don't know what his future holds. We don't know what even if he does stay in Tampa Bay, we don't know who the quarterback is going to be in Tampa Bay for the next 2-3 years, right? And then on top of that, we just don't know what his role in the offense is. Is he this exclusively pass catching back? What is it? I mean, this past weekend was so weird to watch, where I think Ronald Jones lost a fumble. And normally when Ronald Jones loses a fumble, he's out of there and Leonard Fournette's in. But Leonard Fournette dropped a pass in the flat. And after that dropped pass, Leonard Fournette barely saw the field the rest of the game, and Ronald Jones went off. So he's getting up there in age. His future is questionable. And he just and something that a lot of people forget is his extensive injury history. He's been injured this year. I mean, we can pull up his game log and see how many seasons he's missed time for a number of different things. In this video, I'll put up his player profile picture because it's ridiculous, all his different injuries. So it's just not a player that I think has an optimistic future, and definitely not someone I'm looking to acquire just because he's not proven it this year and the future doesn't look any better.
Yeah, I was wondering what overlap we were going to have.
Yeah. And
it's very interesting that was the one that we decided on. But after watching this Bucs, I'm biased. I own Ronald Jones. You know, I love him. I have him in almost every single league.
Yeah.
And I just love the way he can make the first man miss. But Leonard Fournette, I'm just like, he kills the flow of the offense.
Yeah.
And that's my biggest thing, is it just throws everything off. And no, you're exact. I mean, you hit it on the money. You hit it on the money. I was never a big Leonard Fournette guy. I liked him, but he was just a man-child playing against a bunch of kids. He was just. But then when you get to the NFL, it's like, I mean, he's still like huge and strong.
Yeah.
You know, he's not.
He needs that workhorse role.
It's not like he's not a Saquon talent.
No.
He's like in between. He's like a wannabe Derrick Henry.
Yeah,
but he's like a poor man's Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
Which is not a bad thing. Like, it's not that's the thing. It's not a bad thing to be a poor man's Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
But Derrick Henry's Derrick Henry. You know, like it's just completely different.
Yeah, getting 25 carries a game. So such a beast. Yeah, I'm with you, man. All right, who's your last trending down player before we wrap it up?
See, I've really been contemplating on if I really think it's trending down, or I just am just like, man, I don't know how to feel.
Yeah.
But it's just, I don't trust the Packers run game in the long term. I think Aaron Jones
Interesting.
is a trending down prospect.
Okay.
And for dynasty purpose reasons, Aaron Jones is going, to my knowledge, is going into a contract year.
He is. Yep.
And this class is littered with running backs.
Yeah.
I know they need help at the receiver position. They spent a second-round pick on A.J. Dillon out of Boston College already.
Yeah.
They have, what's his name? who's been the Williams.
Yeah. From BYU.
And yes, I know, but still, he is a solid player.
Oh yeah.
But I just have a hard time wanting Aaron Jones on my team.
Yeah.
This year, I mean, yeah, he can win it. But if I had a trade deadline over the past couple weeks, I would have been trying to flip Aaron Jones.
Yeah.
Because, even if he ends up even when he ends up getting a contract somewhere, I mean, unless if somehow the Packers pay him, which I don't think is going to happen.
Yeah.
I just am not. It's just a situation that I've never felt good about, and I don't think I'm alone on this. I think a lot of people feel this way about Aaron Jones, but this is like the moment in time where I'm like, in Dynasty, I would be like, he would be, if he was like my top back on my team, I would be like, I don't feel good about this moving into next year.
Yeah. Man, I'm with you. I'm with you just because of his snaps, right? I'll put it up on the screen here. But he has seen 54, 47, 71, 52, 58, 61, and 64% of the snaps, right? So he's not getting the elite. He's not on the field as much as you'd like a top-tier running back to be. And last season, man, I remember this past offseason, everyone was talking about his touchdown regression, right? How he scored, it was like, 18 touchdowns last season, something absolutely insane. And that's what carried him. Yeah, and that's what carried him to his dominance last season, and how just naturally he was going to score less touchdowns. And he started off the year hot. He has 7 touchdowns in the first 5 games that he played. Right, so again, just being incredibly productive, not getting so many the carries, but getting so many touchdowns that he is just propping up his value as an elite running back. And since then, he hasn't gotten the touchdowns, and he's slowing down. I mean, he's still put up 12 and 13 points over the past 2 weeks, despite playing less snaps. And he's seeing plenty of targets, but I'm with you, man. He doesn't have a contract going into next season. He's a player that's a little bit boom bust just because of that touchdown difference. And he's not a workhorse, right? If you can, here, I'll put it this way. If you can flip Aaron Jones for a trade I would make right now, if I had Aaron Jones and you had Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I'd make that trade in a heartbeat, right? I'd make that trade. And I guess it depends. If you're pushing for a championship this year, I understand waiting. But if you're in any kind of rebuild mode, I would be selling Aaron Jones if possible.
If I did my math correctly, he had 19 touchdowns last year.
Yeah, insane. Absolutely insane.
And the thing is it wasn't like it was one every week.
Yeah.
He had 4 in one game, 3 in another game, and then had 2 in a couple. But I mean, there were a couple games where he played 60% of snaps, and he only scored 3.9 points, 3.8 points, 7.1 points. Like, it's just such a touchdown dependent situation there.
No.
And I don't see them retaining him, and I don't think he is like, let me put it this way, if Dalvin Cook wouldn't have been signed by the Vikings and he hits free agency and the Niners are like, hey, we want to get you and you want to be on our team, I think Dalvin Cook is by far the number 1 running back going into fantasy that year as a Niner.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, over Saquon, over Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
I mean, I would take it every year of his I would every single time.
Mm-hmm.
But Aaron Jones, like, even if he goes to like
trying to think of running back needy teams right now. Most teams are pretty small.
Even if he goes to like Houston, you know, or he went to Arizona and Arizona passes on Kenyon Drake, or they add Aaron Jones to the Chiefs type of thing, or Aaron Jones to Buffalo type of thing. You know, it's like, there's no other team I fit in where I'm like, or Aaron Jones to Seattle. Let's say they kick the wheels off Chris Carson, you know, and they want to get to, it's like, even then I'm like, I don't think he's the best back on that team.
Yeah.
So that's kind of that's who I was like, he's good. Don't get me wrong. Like he's a, let me see. He's the number 7. He's a 7 running back right now. He's, you know, like he's top 10 running back right now. He's awesome, you know,
in targets, scoring touchdowns.
But in terms of Dynasty, like me, seeing the downtrend of it, it's like, dude, this is it. And I mean, you peaked in week 2 when he had 18 touches for 168 yards and 3 touchdowns, and he caught 4 passes for 68 yards. Yeah. Like that was it. And then after that, it's just been, he had a 20-point game, and the games he's played in since then, he's scored over 10 points. So it's been awesome.
Yeah.
For fantasy points, but I'm talking about like
the future,
longevity, dynasty.
Yeah.
It's just a player where I'm like it's different. Like you pick DJ Moore, and it's like he has at least, he's still going up.
Yeah. It
just may not be as high as like everyone thinks, or it's like he's wide receiver 12. Nah, maybe he's more like wide receiver 20, 25.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Because him and Terry McLaurin at this point should have swapped positions in the draft.
Yeah, I agree.
McLaurin should have been like a 3rd round pick in our draft, and he should have went in like the 6th, 7th round.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So
I miss Terry McLaurin every day. Anyways, let's put your ranking of Aaron Jones to the test here. Dynasty formats. Who would you rather have on your dynasty team, Aaron Jones or Joe Mixon? Joe Mixon has the contract. Joe Mixon. All right. Who would you rather have, Aaron Jones, Nick Chubb?
With Kareem Hunt.
Kareem Hunt's there for 2 more years with the contract, but I mean,
I still take Nick Chubb.
Nick Chubb, yep, younger, interesting. Okay, what about Aaron Jones or Austin Eckler? Eckler, who just got that contract, has
Austin Eckler
under center. Interesting. Okay, final one for you. Aaron Jones, and this might be a smash one. Aaron Jones, DeAndre Swift. It's tough.
I mean, for my dynasty team?
Yeah, for your dynasty team.
For my dynasty team, DeAndre Swift.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. Younger, is getting that workhorse role. Yeah, I agree. I would also take Swift there, and I wouldn't hesitate. I would take a Swift there for sure. But that's just how high I am on Swift as well. So we'll see.
Yeah. So.
Awesome. Well, dude, that wraps up Trendtastic Tuesday, man. I like it. The first one, it was already, episode 1 was already fire, man. I'm excited to see. We're going to try to do this on a week-by-week basis. And to everyone watching, we want to analyze one of your teams. Subscribe to the channel. Go find me on Instagram at fantasy.football.buff and DM me screenshots of your team, and we'll break it down. Send us trade questions, and we will talk about your team on this channel. That's all for me. Noah, do you have anything else?
Just, if you're, I will say this as someone, let's just get out on episode 1. If you're really truly watching, what Dynasty Fantasy Football Buff is putting out here for dynasty purposes, if you really want to do yourself a favor and get, more inclined with Dynasty, and you really want to win your Dynasty year in, year out, pick 1 or 2 college football games that you're going to watch every single weekend.
I love it.
And you will just, and pick a different team every time. Like, all right, this week I'm going to watch this game, then I'm going to watch this game. And if you want, I'll tell you what games I think you should watch for dynasty purposes. And like, hey, take a look at these type of players and what you want to do, type of thing. And it'll go a long way. So that's, and I'm going to reiterate this 1,000 times. College football is the best way to become good at fantasy football.
Yeah. Dude, I agree, man. I actually personally haven't done this yet, but I've had so many people recommend just to improve my dynasty skills overall is to join a Devy league. Have you heard of these before?
No.
You draft, in this league, you draft college and high school prospects, right?
Oh, it's a dynasty you guys would get your butts whooped by me.
That you pick players from high school and they carry up and you keep them on your team until they join your dynasty league. So it's something that I'm interested in doing, something I'd recommend other people do, just from what I've heard, because that's how you do it.
If you find one, let me know. I will be in it in a heartbeat. I would love that.
You and I should start one, and we'll get we'll get people on it.
I'm down. I'm down. All right.
Dude, well, this was awesome. Again, if you're new to the channel, subscribe, and yeah, man, we'll see you next week.
Happy Trendtastic Tuesday.
Hell yeah. Peace.